Live from the National News Studio, Sri Lanka.
A very good evening to you and a warm welcome to the news live from the National News Studios. And joining with me tonight on the news is Niket Karunaratne and I'm Sharifa Tahir. First off, we take a look at stories making headlines tonight. Businessman Dhammika Perera's name published in the Gazette for National List MP post. The Prime Minister says International Monetary Fund representatives will arrive in the country on the 20th. India offers a credit line of $55 million to purchase urea fertilizer for Yala season. Another 2 ships arrive with diesel and petrol. Monday has been declared as a public and school holiday. Dengue becomes a high risk. Russia says Ukraine export ships will be allowed to leave safely.
On to those and other stories in detail. The name of well-known businessman Dhammika Perera has been published in the Gazette today for the National List MP post by the Elections Commission.
With the resignation of Basil Rajapaksa from the parliament seat, the post fell vacant. Mr. Dhammika Perera obtained membership of Sri Lanka Podu Jana Peramuna today. The letter was handed over by the General Secretary of the party, Sagara Karyavasam, to Mr. Dhammika Perera. Thereafter, Mr. Karyavasam has submitted the name of Mr. Dhammika Perera as a Member of Parliament to the Elections Commission. It is reported that Mr. Dhammika Perera resigned from the post of director of many companies as a shareholder at the Colombo Stock Exchange today. Mr. Dhammika Perera was born in 1967 at Magona Payagala, studies at Horana Takshila College and followed higher education at Moratu University. Mr. Dhammika Perera is an investor of many local and foreign companies, chairman of several local private companies and represents the director board of many companies.
Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe says that representatives of the International Monetary Fund will arrive in the country on the 20th.
The Prime Minister expressed these views during a discussion with the owners of media organizations yesterday.
Prime Minister's senior economic advisor Dr. R.S.H. Samaratunga explained the economic situation of the country. The Prime Minister said that he expected to reach a staff-level agreement with the IMF by the end of this month. He emphasized that the food security program is implemented due to the prevailing food shortage. He expressed belief that the government will be able to provide 10% of the population who cannot get 3 meals a day free meals. The Prime Minister requested media owners to support the government to give a true picture about the present situation. The Prime Minister said maximum efforts will be taken to minimize impact by providing state financial and supply assistance. He said that a financial security network of 200 billion rupees is being collected for social security and discussions are taking place with Japan to get their support by winning the confidence of Japan again. The Prime Minister emphasized that the countries are providing food and medical assistance, but no country will give fuel free of charge. The Prime Minister said trust will be faced on the media organizations during the next few months to build the country. India has agreed to provide a credit line of $55 million to purchase urea fertilizer for the Yala season.
65,000 metric tons of urea fertilizer are expected to be imported. General Manager of the Indian Exim Bank Narendra Vaidhi and Secretary to the Ministry of Finance M. Sirivardhana signed the agreement today. The Prime Minister has pointed out earlier that priority should be given to ensure food security of the people as they are facing an acute shortage of essential food items. A group of people including Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, Indian High Commissioner Gopal Bagle and Minister Mahinda Amaravira were present at the signing of the agreement.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has pointed out the need to maintain public transport services more methodically and qualitatively to attract passengers. The President mentioned this during the progress review discussion of the Ministry of Transport and Highways.
The President said that people are facing severe difficulties due to price increase of fuel and there is a high demand for public transport. Lengthy discussions took place on providing fuel continuously to trains and buses according to a systematic program. It was decided to issue fuel for private buses through the filling stations of the SLTB in the night. It has been decided at the discussion to enhance park and drive system and to reduce charges when parking vehicles under the system. The President instructed to look into the facilities to provide vehicle parking facilities near selected railway stations. It was proposed to use a joint timetable for short distance running for SLTB and private buses. It was decided to commence new train services targeting office workers and to increase the number of compartments of the trains that are being operated now. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa said that quality of public transport should be increased to attract people for the service. They should be able to go to office comfortably by bus similar to going by car. If it does not happen, the person who can afford will use the car. No matter how many park and drives are there, it will not happen if the quality of transport cannot be given. It was agreed to solve issues related to SLTB services and to submit the cabinet paper in due course. Plans have been drawn up to lease out for 1 year lands under the Railway Department to cultivate food crops. Minister Bandulu Gunawardena said that plans have been prepared to lease out the lands for farmers, societies through divisional secretariats. President's head of staff Anura Dissanayake, Transport Ministry officials, Private Bus Association representatives and a group of people attended the discussion.
Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara says that 2 ships carrying diesel and petrol are scheduled to arrive in the country on the 12th. Those 2 ships have arrived closer to the local coastline. Minister Kanchana Wijesekara said that according to the present needs, 5,000 metric tons of diesel are needed for a normal day. 2,800 to 3,000 metric tons were sent last week. By now, nearly 5,000 metric tons are issued as diesel. 3,500 metric tons of petrol are needed daily. 2,500 were issued from last Tuesday. There is a shortage of kerosene. Selected fisheries zones and agricultural zones will be sent kerosene tomorrow and day after.
ඩීසල් එක බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා 22 තව අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා පෙට්‍රල් එකක් ඒ අනුව අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා බොරතෙල් නෞකාවක් 20ට ඉස්සෙල්ලා තව දෙවෙනි නෞකාව එන්න ඒ තැන් වලට යවනවා මම විශ්වාස කරන්නේ කොපමණ තෙල් ආවත් අවශ්‍යතාවය අඩුවක් තියෙයි කියලා. ඒ අවශ්‍යතාවය මිනිස්සු එකතු කරනවා. ඒස අපි උත්සාහ කරනවා පුළුවන් තරම් ඉන්ධන තොග ලබා දෙන්න. නමුත් මම හිතනවා විකල්ප ක්‍රමයකට අගමැතිතුමත් යෝජනා කරා යම් සලාක ක්‍රමයක් යන්න වෙයි කියලා. ඒක මම දැක්කා විපක්ෂය නියෝජනය කරන චම්පික රණවක හිටපු ඇමතිතුමත් යෝජනා කරලා තිබුණා. ඒක අපි අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම ක්‍රියාත්මක කිරිය යුතුයි. පොදු ප්‍රවාහනයට ප්‍රමුඛතාවය විශේෂයෙන්ම කර්මාන්ත ශාලාවලට ප්‍රමුඛතාවය ඇතුළුව අනෙකුත් ඒවාට ප්‍රමුඛතාවයක් යම් ආකාරයක ලැබෙන විදියට ඒක අපි යන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
Queues are seen near filling stations in the western province and in urban areas. Our reporters say petrol supplies are taking place to some extent, but there is a reduction of diesel supply. Ceylon Petroleum Corporation manages the distribution of fuel. Deputy Chairman of Petroleum Distributors Association, Kusum Sandanayaka, said fuel supply is done giving priority for public transport.
United Nations has launched a humanitarian appeal for Sri Lanka. United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization in Sri Lanka says they are working towards resolving the crisis in the island nation.
Now, according to latest UN report, Sri Lanka is one of the 2 Asian nations that are considered as hunger hotspots. According to your assessment, what's the situation in Sri Lanka?
It's a grave situation, and the story starts about a year back. when the ban on import of chemical fertilizer was announced. Now, going green is everybody's aspiration, and there's nothing wrong in wanting to go green, but there is a method to it. It's not something that can be achieved overnight. We have to develop capacities, we have to train farmers, we have to ensure that adequate inputs are available. Sri Lanka took the step of banning import of fertilizers, and that led to nearly a 50 to 60% drop in production in 2021-22 Maha. By the time this ban was removed, the world prices, international prices for fertilizers had nearly quadrupled. From what was the urea price of $200 for a metric ton had gone up to nearly $900 per metric ton. That was also the time when the foreign exchange crisis had hit the country. So the international prices have gone up, and at the same time you don't have money to buy. So the end result was that Sri Lanka was not able to bring fertilizer into the country, and that is having its impact now on the current underway Yala season 2, and we do not have, obviously it's just the sowing which has happened, the production is yet to happen, harvesting is yet to happen. Our guess is that Yala also will have a severe impact and not give us more than 50% of the normal year's production. So you have a back-to-back 2 seasons, Maha 21-22 and Yala 2022, both suffering on account of production. So the supply is definitely impacted. Now, when the country's supply, internal supply gets impacted, the only way out is to import and fill the gap. For Sri Lanka, the problem is that with the crunch and crisis of foreign exchange, import of essential commodities, including food, is becoming that much more difficult. Added to that, the Sri Lankan rupee has, against the dollar, has depreciated by more than 70 to 80% since March. So whatever import comes in becomes extremely costly. So the vulnerable section of the society who cannot afford to buy costly food in the market is having to really cut back on their meals or shift from nutritious meals to more of calorie-based cereal sort of a meal. So you will have the chicken and the fish going out of the plate, the greens reducing, and the calories coming through mostly cereals. So the nutrition is getting impacted. Worst, of course, would be the impact on children, pregnant, lactating mothers, the vulnerable part of the society. So I'll say we are in a grave situation, and we have to ensure that adequate attention is paid to agriculture, to ensure that production capacities are rebuilt and the sector reinvigorates, bounces back, and starts producing for the people.
And the disruption of global food supply chain could also make the situation worse.
It will, and that's bound to happen, and that's why I mentioned that if you are economically strong, you are able to meet those disruptions. But if you are not economically strong and you are in an economic crisis, coupled with the food crisis, the situation becomes that much worse. Sri Lanka, sadly, today is in an agriculture sector crisis, but also in an economic crisis. And that is, the two combined are making the situation really bad for the country.
Yes. Now, United Nations yesterday launched a global humanitarian appeal for Sri Lanka. Could you elaborate more on this?
We had met the Prime Minister a couple of weeks back, and he then wrote to the Secretary General of the UN asking for international help, multi-sectoral international help. And that is the response with which the UN has come forward. We launched a flash appeal yesterday. 47.1 million is what we are asking for, about 2 million people. And this has given priority to 3 major sectors. It's food security and livelihood, it's health, and it's protection, social protection. So these 3 sectors have been prioritized, of which, and I'm really happy that the UN country team here and the development partners saw it fit to really prioritize agriculture and food security. So of that 47.1 million, we, as just one sector, food security and nutrition, account for nearly 70% of that. So it's a huge ask from FAO, for the agriculture sector. We are targeting about 398 smallholder farmers, 398,000 smallholder farmers, and our ask is about 14.9 million. So now we have to see how the donors react to it and how much of funding we can generate.
Moving on to more local stories, the government has taken steps to add another express train to operate on Kalani Valley railway track with the aim of minimizing congestion on the high-level road.
Minister Bandula Gunawardena said the new train will run from Wagga to Fort Railway Station. The minister mentioned this when he went this morning to inspect the passenger vehicle yard being built near Wagga Station. People who are arriving in motor cars, motorcycles and bicycles will be able to park the vehicles in the yard. A park and drive system is also scheduled to be launched. The minister said that the president instructed him yesterday to take steps to convert Kalani Valley line into an electric powered train track. The minister also said that the train fares will be revised. Minister Bandula Gunawardena said that attempts should be made to maintain train fares at half rates when compared with bus fares. He said measures should be taken to earn an income using other assets of the railway to eradicate the loss.
A condolence motion was presented in Parliament today by Minister Dinesh Gunawardena into the death of former MP Amarakirti Athukorala, who was killed at Nitambua on the 9th of May.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa said that they vehemently condemned the terrorist attack of killing MP Amarakirti Athukorala. He said that they consider the date of the death as a black mark on the country.
Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe said that the killing was not limited to his family, but it was a slap on the parliament. If a member is killed, it is a shot against our system. They have to speak not only about the member who died, but about others as well, especially why it happened to MP Kumara Velgama, who is the first person to ask President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to go home. I have found details. People who have come from outside have committed the acts. Several of them have been arrested. Some of them have fake Facebook accounts. Independent investigations have been conducted. All of us expressed our condolences. This first happened to Mr. Bandaranayake when he was assassinated. All in the United National Party who were in the opposition were saddened. There were many incidents like that. We all condemned the assassination of Lakshman Kadirgamar. The LTTE criticized him. When all members, including the opposition leader, expressed condolence, one member did not do so. It was encouraged and it is regrettable. I will say that the Hansard report says that on the 20th about MP Chanakyan Rasamanikam, the houses were set on fire because vote was given to the matters unfavorable to the country, such as the 20th Amendment. There were wrong policies in the 2020 budget and in 2021 budget. Houses were burnt because hands were raised for both. Kumara Velgama did not do anything. Remember that it happened because the people and their opinion were betrayed. How can you speak like that? Does he approve setting fire to houses? Assaulting Velgama has been approved. When the parliament was surrounded, we said there was no damage to us. On the next day, there were pictures with frontline Kumara Gunaratnam. No one opposes frontline members acting democratically. Is that what is happening in Parliament? If he does not withdraw his statement announcing regret by the end of Parliament week, I will ask the Speaker to inquire it by putting it into the relevant committee and to submit report to us. Things like that cannot happen in this chamber.
අනුමත කරනවද මේ මරණ එක අනුමත කරනවද වෙල්ගම මැතිතුමාට ගැහුව එක අනුමත කරනවද මේ සභාවේ මට ඒක අහන්න තියෙනවා මේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුව වට කරද්දි එතන ඇවිල්ලා කවන්නේ අපිට හානියක් වුණේ නැහැ කියලා ඊළඟ දවසේ පෙරටුගාමි කුමා ගුණරත්න මේක පින්තූරෙක් තියෙනවා පෙරටුගාමි ප්‍රජාතන්ත්‍රවාදී වැඩ කරන එකට කවුරුත් විරුද්ධ නැහැ ඒකෙන් පිට කියන්නේ ඉතින් මේකද මේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුව සිදුවෙන්නේ මම ඔබතුමාට කියනවා එන පාර්ලිමේන්තු සතිය අවසන් වෙනකොට එතුමා කනගාටුව ප්‍රකාශ කළා මේක ඉල්ලාස් කරගත්තේ නැත්නම් කතානායකතුමාට ඒක විභාග කළා අදාළ කොමිටියට දාලා අපිට වාර්තාවක් දෙන්න කියලා මං කියනවා. මෙහෙම ඒවා මේ සභාවේ වෙන්න බෑ. මේ වගේ අර්බුදයකදී ජනතාව විරෝධතාව
Parliamentarian Mahinda Rajapaksha said that it is true that people engage in protests in a crisis like this, but it goes to the extent of killings and setting fire due to the people behind it directing those activities. Political forces have arisen to direct people's disappointment towards violence. The death of MP Amarakirti Athukorala took place due to such directions. Justice is meted out when a person dies. However, was justice meted out to him? These regulations were introduced in the 88-89 period. Orders were given to kill the opponent, named as a traitor. That is what was tried on MP Amarakirthi Atukorala. What wrong did he do? He did not insult or harm his opponents. His political path was democratic and innocent. The struggle of the persons who killed a person like that cannot be peaceful. It was a killing to frighten the people who think to live democratically. Religious leaders who were at the place of struggle did not speak to stop the killing. They did not condemn it as well. People are afraid to do so. I give my thanks for presenting the condolence motion by the House under such a situation.
Chairman of the COPE Committee, Professor Charita Herath, says that the Parliament should pay special attention on the impact of the economy by the Sri Lankan Airlines. He mentioned this while submitting a report of Public Enterprise Committee to Parliament today. Meanwhile, it was announced in Parliament today that steps are being taken to increase powers of the COPE and COPA committees. Parliamentarian Lakshman Kiriyala said that they always debate and end the COPE Committee report. He said he has proposed the COPE Committee about a financial misappropriation and sent it to the Attorney General. Minister Dinesh Gunawardena said that Parliament as well as the committee will get additional powers when taking action about the reports in connection with COPE and increasing powers of the Petition Committee. He said they agreed to send it to the Attorney General. The Speaker instructed to submit at the next session the relevant amendments to standing orders. It should be considered by everyone in both sides as a victory for Parliament.
A tense situation arose today in front of Battaramulla Isurupaya Education Ministry. The tense situation occurred when protesters of the Inter-University Students Federation tried to enter the Ministry of Education. Police have used tear gas to disperse the protesters. The Education Ministry, issuing a statement, said that the protesters in front of the ministry had not informed in writing or verbally the reasons for their arrival. Discussion took place between Education Minister Susil Premajayant and representatives of the Inter-University Students Federation around 3:30 p.m. at the ministry. Discussions took place about the problems prevailing at Kalaniya and Ruhuna universities. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa says new possibilities should be identified to attract tourists.
The President mentioned this during the progress review meeting of the Ministry of Tourism today at the President's house in Colombo. There are more than 4 million persons who are directly and indirectly connected to the tourism industry. The Easter Sunday attack and COVID pandemic paralyzed the tourism industry. Thereafter, it faced a setback again due to the prevailing crisis when it was becoming normal. The tourism industry contributes to the national economy and it affects job security of a large number of people. Therefore, the President said it should be revived soon. The President pointed out the importance of rectifying wrong propaganda about the country through embassies. The President instructed to provide solutions to the fuel problem faced by those who are in the tourism industry. He pointed out the need to find solutions to the gas shortage experienced by small-scale, medium-scale and large-scale hoteliers. It was discussed that by promoting locations for film shootings, international attention can be drawn to the tourism industry. President's Head of Staff Anuradhi Sanayaka, Ministry Secretary W.A. Chulananda Pereira and a group of people were present on the occasion.
Cheques were handed over yesterday for super prize winners drawn from the lotteries at the National Lotteries Board at the Colombo National Lotteries Board main branch.
The checks for Super Prize winners of Goviseta, Mega Power, Mahajana Sampatha and Handahana lotteries were handed over. A group of officials, including Chairman of the National Lotteries Board Lalit Piyum Pereira, Additional General Manager Sanjeeva Edirisinghe, Chief Financial Officer Dr. Harsha Bandara and lottery agents were present on the occasion. Well, that's it on local stories. We'll be back with news overseas. Do stay tuned in.
Terima Kutumi Pantan.
Welcome back. On foreign news, a senior Ukrainian presidential aide has told the foreign medias that between 100 and 200 Ukrainian troops are being killed on the front line every day.
Podolyak said Ukraine needed hundreds of Western artillery systems to level the playing field with Russia in the eastern Donbas region. He also said Kyiv is not ready to resume peace talks with Moscow. Ukrainian troops are under relentless bombardment as Russian forces attempt to take control of the whole of Donbas. The Russian forces have thrown pretty much everything non-nuclear at the front, and that includes heavy artillery, multiple rocket launch systems and aviation, Mr. Podolyak said. He repeated Ukraine's appeal for more weapons from the West, saying that the complete lack of parity between the Russian and Ukrainian armies was the reason for Ukraine's heavy casualty rate. Our demands for artillery are not just some kind of whim, but an objective need when it comes to the situation of the battlefield, he said, adding that Ukraine needs 150 to 300 rocket launch systems to match Russia, a much higher number than it has received so far. Mr. Podolyak also said peace talks could only resume if Russia surrendered. At least 3 people were killed and 3 others injured, including the suspected gunman and a Maryland State Police trooper in a mass shooting at a manufacturing facility north of Smithsburg, authorities said.
The Washington County Sheriff's Office said deputies responded to a shooting incident at about 2:30 p.m. When deputies arrived at Columbia Machine, they found 4 gunshot victims, 3 of whom were dead. The suspect, a male, fled before the sheriff's office arrived. A state trooper encountered the suspect and they exchanged gunfire. Both were hit and taken to the hospital. The suspect was identified only as a 23-year-old man from West Virginia who also worked at Columbia Machine, which provides concrete products, equipment to customers in over 100 countries. The motive has not been determined.
Terima Kutumi Pantan.
And moving on to sports news now, this time over it's about cricket. Sri Lanka team for the 5 one-day international series with Australia has been named. Captain of the under-19 team, Dunith Vellagama, is included in the team.
Sri Lanka team named for the one-day series includes 21 players. The captain of the team is Dasun Shanaka. Pathum Nissanka, Dhanushka Gunatilaka, Kusal Mendis, Charit Asalanka, Dhananjaya De Silva, Dinesh Chandimal, Bhanuka Rajapaksha and Niroshan Dikwalla have been called as batsmen. Spinners are Vanindu Hasaranga, Ramesh Mendis, Mahesh Teekshana, Praveen Jaivikrama and Jeffrey Wandase. Chamika Karunaratne, Dushmanta Chamera, Asita Fernando, Nuam Tushara and Pramod Madhushan are fast bowlers. Pramod Madhushan and Nuam Tushara have been called for the Sri Lanka one-day team for the first time. The one-day series will commence on the 14th. The first 2 matches will be played at the Pallekele International Stadium and the other 3 matches at the R. Premadasa Stadium in Colombo. The third and final T20 match between Sri Lanka and Australia will be played tomorrow at the Pallekele International Stadium. Australia has already won the series by winning the previous 2 matches. Players of both teams engaged in practices today at the Pallekele Stadium. The third T20 between the two countries will commence at 7 p.m. tomorrow, and the ChannelEye of the Rupavahini Corporation will telecast the match.
Terima kasih, Pantan. Tan.
Well, with that, we conclude this bulletin of news. Join us again tomorrow at the very same time. Together with Niket, I'm Sharifa, wishing you a pleasant night.
Good night.